What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I will be making schedule predictions for every single Power 5 team in college football for this upcoming season. And I'll also do a subsequent conference standings video once I finish up every single team in a specific conference, just as a synopsis of all of my schedule predictions. I have finished up every other Power 5 conference except for the Big Ten, so I'm working through them. So let's go ahead and get into the Iowa schedule predictions. So some quick thoughts on the Iowa program as a whole headed into 2022. And this is one of my favorite programs, honestly, just as an outside looking in. I'm not a fan of them. But just looking in from the outside, they're one of my favorite programs because they are always incredibly consistent. And they seem to just find a way to win all of the time, even when they really shouldn't have. And Kirk Ferentz is an absolute legend at head coach. And he rarely, if ever, fields a bad team. The defense is always consistent. And while the offense often leaves something to be desired, you can never count them out. Regardless of who they're playing, they have a shot in every game they're in. And last season lined up really, really well for them. I mean, they had a shot to make a real potential playoff push for a minute there until it all kind of fell apart against Purdue and Wisconsin, and then a blowout loss to Michigan in the Big Ten title game. But, still a very good year for them. But this season undoubtedly features a tougher schedule than last season did, and that makes topping last year really, really difficult. Dodging Michigan and Ohio State last year was critical to them getting to 10 wins in the regular season. And, they get both this year. So those are already two games that look like an uphill battle. And overall, I think this team will be one of the better teams in the conference, but not good enough to put together another 10-win regular season like they did last year. So now let's talk about some opponents who just don't have much of a chance to beat them, barring some level of catastrophe. And those two teams are South Dakota State and Nevada. Neither one of those teams should be able to beat Iowa. If they're losing those games, then they have bigger problems at hand. So the first game we are going to talk about comes in Week 2, and that is home against Iowa State, and this is a really, really big one. Huge rivalry. Game is always really important to those two programs, and this one's really important to Iowa because of how difficult their conference schedule lines up to be this year. So a must-win in some situations if you really want to push for that 8, 9, 10 win range. This is when you're almost going to have. And I do think Iowa finds a way to get it done. They're the home team. They won last year against a better Iowa State team. Iowa State loses Brock Purdy. They lose Breece Hall. And so I think Iowa's going to be a better football team in general. I think they're the home team here as well, so that's going to help them out. So I'm going to go with Iowa to win there in Week 2, get them off to a 3-0 start. Then they go on the road at Rutgers in Week 4, and that is not an easy game. That is a much tougher game than people may lead you to believe. Rutgers is not the same Rutgers that they were a few years ago. Greg Schiano has that thing rolling there, and while they're not like a perennial playoff contender by any means, they're a really tough out. They're not a team that you want to have to deal with, especially on the road there. I think Iowa's going to be fine. I think they're going to be able to get through that game. They'll be favored in that game. They should be. They should be just fine and be able to get a win. But definitely one to keep an eye on. Definitely not an easy matchup by any means. Going to go with Iowa there. Keep an eye on it, though. And then they head in and they play Michigan at home. And this is one that I think will really tell you what this Iowa team's going to be, because Michigan is a really, really tough matchup for them. Now, they may be able to find an upset here, but it would be an upset. I don't think Iowa is going to have the offense really to keep pace with Michigan in this game, and I think they're going to struggle a little bit here. Even being at home, it's not a game I think they're going to get blown out in by any means, but it's not a game that I think they're going to be able to get the win in. I'm going to go with Michigan there. Then they go at Illinois, and that's a little step down in competition, but still, similar to Rutgers, not an easy game either. Illinois is going to fight you for what you get. Brett Bielema has them where they play a very, very physical, hard-nosed brand of football, and they're not a team you can just take lightly and ignore. But Iowa is the better program there. They're the better team in that game, so I think they're going to be just fine. I think they'll get the win in that one. Then they get a really important bye week before going on the road at Ohio State, and this one is one where I think Ohio State's going to be the best team in the conference next year, and I think they're going to be on a mission, and I think it's going to kind of be scary for the rest of the Big Ten, to be honest, because of that. So even coming off the bye week, when you're on the road there against Ohio State, I just don't think Iowa has the offense to be able to keep pace with them. I know their defense is going to be good, but Ohio State is going to put points up against everybody they play next year. Their offense is that good. And I just don't think Iowa is going to have that same momentum on offense. I'm going to go with Ohio State to win in that one. Then they host Northwestern, and that'll be a nice dip back down in competition for them again, similar to the Illinois game, but this one they get at home, so it'll be even easier. And not a game you can take lightly. I mean, Northwestern is always very well coached, but they've taken a large step backwards in recent years, and I don't think they're going to be great next year either. So, not a game you can take lightly and just expect to win, but definitely one that Iowa should win. I'm going to go with Iowa to win there. Then they have to make a tough road trip to Purdue, and this is one of two, I think, really evenly matched teams. I think both teams are probably in that 8 to 9 win range, and it was a really good game last year. Purdue ended up getting the better of them. And so, huge game for them there. I think this one may come down just to something as simple as home field advantage, which Purdue has. I trust Purdue's offense a little bit more than Iowa's, although I think they're going to be really comparable just as teams in general. I'm going to go with Purdue to get a win there. Definitely a winnable game for Iowa, though, one that they could certainly look to get a win in. They follow it up by hosting Wisconsin, and this is another one similar to the Purdue that is pretty evenly matched. Really, really good teams that aren't quite in that Ohio State range, but they're no slouches either. And this is one of two similarly matched teams, in my opinion. Two teams that pride themselves on being really disciplined, well-coached, and playing good defense. An interesting matchup. I think Iowa's going to be a little bit better than Wisconsin this year, and I don't trust Wisconsin's offense at all to put up much of anything. Anytime I try to buy in that their offense is going to take that next step forward, they just don't. And Iowa's at home here. Going to go with them to get that one. Then another one of these really tough games, and this is a really tough stretch to round out your year. They go on the road at Minnesota, and that's another tough game. One where I think it's two really evenly matched teams again. You know, you maybe could argue for a slight edge Iowa. You could also argue for a slight edge Minnesota. The teams are pretty even. It's on the road there at Minnesota, which makes it really tough. And I think P.J. Fleck is going to have Minnesota ready to go for this one. I'm going to go with Minnesota to get a win here. Another game, though, really, really close. One that Iowa certainly could win, but I'm going to go with Minnesota at home. Then they round out the year on a Friday. They host Nebraska, and this is another one that's really tough. Now, I think Iowa is a better team than Nebraska, but it's not by a huge margin. It's definitely one that Nebraska could win. But with Iowa being at home, with how well coached I always expect them to be and know that they're going to be, and you know, being there at the end of the year, I just have more faith in Iowa at this point as a program and as a coaching staff than I do in Nebraska. I'm going to go with Iowa to win there to round out the year. So that would make Iowa 8-4 on the season, which to me is a solid record for them considering the schedule they have to play. And while they could get back up to 10 wins, assuming they beat Purdue and Minnesota on the road, they still, to do that, have to beat Wisconsin, Nebraska, Iowa State, and Rutgers, all of which are losable games that I gave them the benefit of the doubt in. And to pull off all of those wins, to me, assumes things work out perfectly for them. And we know that that rarely, if ever, happens. Now, if they could also upset an Ohio State or a Michigan, those games aren't completely unwinnable or anything like that, but it will require a lot of things to fall their way in that game. And even if they do pull off one of those, I still don't think that they're very likely to get to 10 or 11 wins, just because of how many games on the schedule are really difficult kind of toss-up games. So to me, anything in the 7 to 9 win range, 7 on the very low end, 9 on your high end there, that makes sense for Iowa. And this season, you know, considering the schedule, I think should be seen as a pretty solid season to me if you get to the 8 or 9 win range. I think that should be considered a good year. I mean, you get Michigan and Ohio State, which you got neither of last year. So, again, I don't think they're going to be able to get back to the 10-win regular season. Got them at 8-4. Anyway, though, that'll do it for this one. Let me know down below in the comment section where you guys agree and or disagree with me on the Iowa schedule in 2022. Let me know what record you think they're going to have next year and who, if anybody, they're going to lose to. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, be sure to go ahead and leave a like because it does help out the channel tremendously. Let us know you're enjoying this kind of content, and subscribe for more college football content in the future. Like I said, this is the last conference I'm working on, so Big Ten content coming your way soon. Check out some of the other content if you haven't. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.